strugglers. Instead of warriors, we've become strugglers. Somewhere, we've been led to believe that life is about constant struggle. You hear of men who struggle with a weight problem, depression, or their finances. You can struggle for a long time and there's no promise of relief. If we're strugglers, we were probably raised by strugglers that taught us that struggling is normal. They fight with everything they've got. They fight with excellence and masterful skill. They win or lose. If a warrior loses, he retreats, retrains, retools, and fights again with all he's got. He fights until he is triumphant. Too many men today have lost this sense of triumph. Finding your inner warrior is about learning to fight for a triumphant life. So that's just a little bit from Backbone, and that was, again, from the Warrior chapter. But there's all kinds of stuff in here. There's stuff about how to have a potent spiritual life and a potent emotional life. In the new edition, there's a whole chapter about relating to women. And that's the other piece that I wanted to mention. I was going to read from that chapter. There's been a lot of press in my country recently in our presidential election. And, you know, we have this candidate who has the whiff of an alpha male. He has a little bit of the stink of a strong man. But really, it's a sort of, and I'm not getting into a political conversation here, but it's a sort of, you know, from the point of view of this men's work, what Trump represents is a great example of impotent rage. And the hunger in American society for strong masculine energy. Because the intelligent leaders, say for instance Barack Obama or somebody like John Oliver, who I think is from here, but you know, they're very smart and they have great powerful things to say, and Barack Obama is the president of the United States, but because of their manner, on that reptilian level, they read as weak men. Like you wouldn't want to have them back you up in a bar fight, however strong or brilliant they may be. So the American public is hungry for someone who's going to say, all right, Dad's home. No more nonsense. I'm going to take care of this. Believe you me. You know, that whole kind of bravado and blowhard energy of Trump, why it's appealing. And that's a whole other conversation. But the piece that I wanted to talk about was how the thing that has come out most recently is the misogynist aspect of Trump's rhetoric. And the violent language and behavior towards women. And that is so much a part of that weak, toxic male. They're always beating up on women. They're always objectifying women. And the vision of Backbone and the vision of an actual strong 360-degree man is a man that can have all of these qualities that I'm describing and also be able to make space for women to have those same qualities. It's a vision where everyone rises. It's not a vision of men becoming dominant again, but rather us as men getting our own shit together and being able to provide that energy so that everyone in our world thrives. So I just wanted to put that out there because it's a conversation that's been happening a lot back home, and I imagine it is here too. Well, this is I want to stop you there because this is the thing that we're trying to find the baby in the bathwater with that, because it's really clear that these old this is what I call the toxic. That's the toxic alpha male. We've learned that is a peacock, that is a Trump. That is who is your guy here? I can't remember his name. You had a Trump not too long ago. Huh? maybe. Anyway, we all have them.
But
We've
they
learned.
worked. They worked in the time.
Sure, but what this is about the man's experience of life. The vision of this is not so. I mean, there is a societal conversation about this, about like what we need as a herd of humanity. But where this is coming from is, where are we at on our deathbed? I was really trying to, and am really trying to help men find what they need to be deeply happy and deeply powerful within their own experience. And so when I say the baby in the bathwater, we've found some of these old qualities of the toxic alpha male are not helpful. It's like telling your boy to stop crying. I have a 4-year-old son, and I would never tell him to stop crying. But for a 35-year-old person who I'm working with as a client, who is failing to get his business launched 3 years later, I'll tell him to stop crying. I'll tell him it's time for you to stop crying and put your boots on and get some work done. If you want to realize your dream and you want to have your triumphant life, you need to stop crying. You need to stop talking about your feelings. You need to stop. You've done that. You've done that part now, modern men. Assuming that we can have a rich emotional life, it's about reclaiming the other pieces of it too. Because remember, the vision is 360-degree man. So there's some men that have, as David was saying, this kind of traditional success archetype of the alpha male, but you see that they're really shitty husbands, or they're cold fathers to their children, or they themselves are alcoholics or something. And then you see other men that have the deepest inner life and the most sophisticated emotional self-knowledge aspect of themselves, but they're broke and they don't know how to get stuff done in their life, you see. So it's really an image of having all of these different powers intact. And there is an allergy to this stuff. I get that. There's an allergy to the alpha male energy because, I mean, look, if you take any big problem that we're facing in the world today, there's a man behind it. I heard some comedian say, everyone was like, "Congratulations, Mrs. Hitler, you had a son." And like how different it would have been had she had a daughter instead. That men will broadcast whatever their inner thing is. We broadcast it in a certain way. And deeply happy, powerful men tend to do good. And if you look at any harm, big harm that's happening in the world, behind it is some unhappy man or some impotent man that is transferring all of his potency outwardly through some toxic behavior. So there's a reason why we have these allergies, and I also just see how, especially with a lot of the young, intelligent men that I work with, that there's a lack of heat in them. They lack what Sam Keen called a fire in their belly. That it's just necessary for them to be able to really be happy in their life. So that's where we're coming from more than anything.
Where would you say you find that fire in the belly?
Well, I heard that there's a discount on this book.
I've already got it.
So there's like 200. There's 200 pages of it in there. It depends on the man. Yeah. Yes, sir.
Valves.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and this is coming. And again, it's very individual because this is the case with a lot of us. Is that as women have become more and more empowered, we haven't. And in many cases, men will make the women in their lives into their mamas. And the women will be the shot callers in the relationship. The women will set the moral tone for the family. They'll make a lot of the important choices for the family, and men will just end up being like the breadwinners and you know, the drones that go off to work. In some cases. In some cases, there's still the sort of like old-fashioned thing, probably no one in this room, but in some cases there's still the case where men don't know how to relate to women because they dominate them and bully them, and in that sort of typical male-dominating way. So it's very individual, but you know, coming from the way that you asked the question, a lot of what it is whether they have a spiritual path or not. The average modern woman has a much richer inner life than the average modern man. Like I said before, we never had Oprah, and women have had to go from, and this is the same thing in my country and yours, from the 1950s woman to the 2016 woman. It's like a meteoric liftoff in terms of their role in society, and their role in the world, and the role in their families. So they've had to evolve so much, and so therapy is there, and all this the sophisticated kinds of body work and exercise stuff, and the health food movement, even in a certain way, let alone all of this stuff. You know, like all of this, you know, Louise Hay and Gabby Bernstein, and you know, all of these Byron Katie, all this kind of stuff. And so the woman will just end up being much more sophisticated on an inner level, and you can see it lampooned in media. You know, like a typical TV show dad, you know, is this doofus, you know, that like his wife has to like kind of keep him from eating himself to death or burning the house down or something. Unless he's a toxic alpha male, you know, and then he's out there kicking ass and taking names, but he can't have a relationship, and all the women around him die, like James Bond or something, you know. So it's very individual, but the thing that goes across the board is just men investing in their inner life and empowering themselves, again, in that 360-degree way, to where they're more matched. Our women really want to be matched. Not at first. So if you sign up for my training program and you start to do some stuff, at first there's a lot of static. They're like, I can't tell you how many times I've had women hire me to work with their husbands and then call me up a few weeks later and be like, I'm not sure I like what's going on. But eventually it sort of comes right. But, you know, I came about this work in part from listening to heterosexual women for a couple of decades complaining about their partners. And how they want them to be able to make a decision. They want them to be able to like stand up and fix something in the house, goddammit, or, you know, like be a man, you know, in the same way that they might have said that they didn't want in the beginning. But when it comes down to it, Colin, it's a matter of, again, we'll just be out of balance in some way.
Yeah, just curious about that balance, because